You're rocking with the voice of Town View. We put our spin on trending topics and school news. Thought-provoking, insightful, we speak the truth. We do it for all ages, not just for the youth. Listen close, you might learn something. Or laugh so hard, you split your side or something. Live stream a podcast. Whenever you tune in, it's sure to be a blast. Let's be honest, you don't want to miss that. Content so real, you gonna want to run it back. We keep you entertained while making an impact. Want foreign announcements, well this is not that. Sports, pop, culture, political. Whatever you like, we got you covered, bro. It's a movement more than just a show. It's KSBM Radio.
Come closer to the music.
Broadcasting live from Marvin E. Robinson School of Business and Management, Dallas, Texas.
My radio station.
We are KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview.
Hello and welcome everyone to KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview. I'm your host Dante, and today I'm joined with
Jasmine, Art Lover,
Unison.
And today we are proud to be joined by the powerhouse principal of the Law Magnet here at Townview, Mr. Michael Jones. Mr. Jones, it is such an honor to have you on the show with us today. Before we get further into the interview, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners out there?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be on your show today, and to all those that are out there listening and watching. This is a great school. We have great students, and I'm very proud to be here with you.
Awesome. So to start us off, we know that you grew up in Tyler, Texas. How would you describe your high school experiences at John Tyler High School shaping your sense of identity and your values today?
Wow, that's a very good question. So for me, growing up in East Texas and growing up in Tyler was a different experience. It's a little bit more rural in a sense than here in the city. So getting to John Tyler High School and being able to participate in all the activities that I like to do, because there were several things that were available to me, really did shape me. The coaches that I had, the teachers that I had, many of them I'm actually still friends with today. I mean, I can say that now because I'm much older. We've gone from being, they've been my teachers and mentors to now we're colleagues and then now friends. And so it's been a very good relationship. They helped mold me and give me the foundation that I needed to be successful in life.
Mm-hmm. So transitioning to your to Rice University for your undergraduate degree, what cultural shifts did you encounter?
Well, that was a big cultural shift in a couple ways. First way, like I just said, I grew up in Tyler, smaller town. Moving to Houston, Texas is a major city. So that was a different experience of getting to see all the different things that a metroplex can offer. And so that was one change. Culturally, John Tyler High School was actually more diverse. We had a pretty solid demographic of different types of students, whether it was Caucasian, African American, Hispanic, we had all different nationalities, different friend groups, and although I get to Rice and it's just a big shock because there are very few people of color. And so for me, learning to navigate that at that time back in the early 90s was a shock for me. Just realistically, there were on a campus of close to 10,000 students, there were about maybe 500 African American students. So that was a culture shock for me.
Prairie View A&M University significantly impacted your educational path. How did the university environment contribute to your understanding of educational administration?
For those who may not know, Prairie View is a great educational institution. They create and have a long history of producing great leaders. And so for me to go from Rice University, that's typically like the Harvard of the South, a great Ivy League school, to participating in an HBCU gave me a totally different experience. And it allowed me really to connect with a more personal relationship with my professors and with my fellow students. And so it allowed me to take on the same responsibility and thoughts that I had as far as when I was getting my master's, say, hey, the students that I serve right now look like these students that are going to this school. Because I was working in Dallas at the time, and so that connection allowed me to think deeply about the students and the communities that I served and use that opportunity to progress.
So starting your career as a teacher and coach, what fundamental lessons did you learn in those early years that continue to impact your values in education?
In the early years, when you start seeing, for me, I saw a lot of students that looked like me, that came from the same home environments as I did. And those things, when it comes to instruction, you start to understand who the students are first and try to understand where they're coming from in developing whatever lesson you're going to teach. Because if I can understand what my students' needs are, then I can understand how to develop and create lessons that help shape their future. Because if I can't reach them to get the information to them, I haven't done my job. And so it took a lot of time learning that skill, and that's kind of how I progressed as I moved through my early stages of my career.
So returning to John Tyler High School, your alma mater provided a unique opportunity. How did your connection to the local community impact your teaching approach?
That was interesting because a lot of the students that I was seeing were going back after just a few years. You start seeing the younger kids that you knew in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so not only did I know them as young people, but I knew their older siblings or I knew their parents. And so if I had an issue or concern, I could just pick up the phone, make a phone call, hey, Tony's over here not doing what he's supposed to. I think that Angie could be a lot more productive in what she's doing by doing these things. And so the personal relationships I had as a child growing up in Tyler myself allowed me to make those connections with those students in that school because I was able to do the same thing that someone had done for me.
Mm-hmm. Moving to Dallas ISD in 2002, what adjustments did you make to like transition to like city more?
Well, my first stop was to Carter High School, Dallas Carter. And so there was a bit of a transition with reassessing where I just said where the kids come from because their needs were different from the students that I had just been serving. Although there are similarities, the students in that area are not exactly the same. So I had to readjust. I had to learn how to talk to students, learn how to accept the way they talk to me is not necessarily being a negative thing, but being a way of connecting because that's how they talk at home. And so we had to find that common ground. And so the biggest shift was that a lot of the supports that I had in Tyler weren't here in Dallas because funding is different. A lot of the community support wasn't the same. So I didn't have a connection to the parents. I couldn't just pick up the phone and call. So those were the adjustments that I had to make in building relationships.
Were there any challenges you faced with that?
Oh, yes. A lot more gang activity at the time. It was real hard connecting with the kids because for those students, they didn't know you. They weren't going to open up to you. And it took a lot more time to develop those relationships. And so it took a little bit more for me to use the skills that I had of building relationships to get there.
So we know, like, as a principal and, you know, of course, having that overall leadership role, you have to have a lot more communication skills. Do you have any, like, tips or advice on how to improve upon those communication skills better?
Communication is a art at times because everybody speaks and sees and listens in a different way. So for me, the first thing that anyone can do is to observe. And so that way I can pay attention to my students and try to figure out what their needs are. Then I have to offer opportunities to where we engage and talk, whether that's written, whether it's a one-on-one meeting or a group meeting. I have to have those opportunities. And so one, you got to listen, and then you have to present and offer those opportunities so that individuals have a feel that they have an open door to have that communication.
Navigating various roles within Dallas ISD, including teaching and coaching at David W. Carter High School, how did your background shape your interactions with students from diverse backgrounds?
Well, at Carter, initially, the backgrounds weren't as diverse. As I spent time there over the years, the demographics changed. So that's when I had to start making that shift. And so for me, culture, like I say, growing up, the high school I grew up in, I had all the same demographics. So I had a cultural understanding of what my students were going through. So if I had a student that was say, hey, my quinceañera this weekend, well, I knew what that was about. And so I could talk to them about that. I didn't have to be like, what is that? I didn't have to answer that question, so that made them feel more comfortable. So dealing with those different type of demographics and fully trying to understand where students come from made it a little bit easier of a transition for me.
As a P-Tech administrator at David W. Carter High School, What insights did you gain about the intersection of technology and education?
Well, P-Tech is a totally different program. It gives students a great opportunity to pick up college hours and even earn up to an associate's degree while in high school, which has a great impact on their futures. We know a lot of students don't get to go to college because finances are important. And so with technology, having those opportunities to do IT, which is the pathway that Carter had at the time, that's a totally different door that opens up to where we are now with AI, so to speak. So if you actually take the opportunity to use that pathway, those students were able to get ahead. And even now with the P-Techs that are still out there, because they've opened up more since I was leading one, more students in the Dallas community are able to get that technology introduced to them at a much earlier phase in life and are able to turn it into a career much sooner.
So, how does your approach differ when working with elementary students compared to middle school and high school students?
Totally different approach. Elementary, I found out when I was there as a leader, it's not necessarily my best fit, and I think sometimes people have to recognize where they work best. I actually interact better with older students, have a better understanding of where they are and what their needs are. Elementary is more caring. There are a lot of things that those students are not able to speak to them for themselves, and so you have to be that advocate. As students get older, they're able to talk. You just have to find a way to allow them to communicate that to you. But when you're dealing with literally 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids, you have to be that person that can reach out and speak for them to make sure that they're getting the education that they deserve.
Can you share a significant moment or achievement from your time as principal facilitator in Central Administration?
Actually, it was the time that I was working at Elijah and Peace. That was a very interesting time. I had gone through some professional things myself, and so I was reevaluating who I was as a leader at the time. But at the same time, I was able to go into Peace and work with the staff and try to make sure that the school was going to be on the right track, whether I stayed or left. And so by going in and reevaluating the staff and making sure that the right people were going to be on the campus was a very impactful thing, because that was a different experience. It's not easy telling someone, or anyone for that matter, that this may not be the job for you. And so I learned at that point that I could be that person that could say, hey, I'm going to make the decision that's best for kids. Because everybody, sometimes that doesn't happen. A teacher will go from one campus to another, and somewhere along the way, a leader such as myself hasn't either developed the skill set to make sure that that happens, or doesn't have the capacity sometimes to want to put another individual in that position. So it doesn't mean that they don't have it, but they care, and so they use that caring instead of being more professional about the situation.
Over your 25-year career, you've held various positions, including principal resident at North Dallas High School and assistant principal at several schools. How did each of those experiences contribute to your growth as an educational leader?
That is where you get your start. The principal residency was actually the final component of that piece. That it's a program that allows you to more or less showcase your skills, which you've learned as an AP. So when I went from being a teacher and got into administration as an AP, every year was an opportunity for me to learn and grow and develop. And so every year, every school that I was at, I learned something new. Whether it was something that I should do or not do, I learned that too. All things are experiences, and those experiences over my 13 years as an AP allowed me to be ready to be a principal. And so when I went into the principal residency, I was basically showcasing all the years of experience that I had earned or learned, and was now ready to show upper leadership, which is Dr. Elizalde's staff and herself, that I was ready to be a principal in DISD.
Transitioning to the law magnet in the middle of the academic school year had to be challenging. How did you build relationships with students, parents, and staff during this transition?
One of the things that I did was to be open. We had a couple different open houses, and I held a couple different meetings for the parents to come in and meet me and get to know who I was. You do those things initially anyway, no matter what time of year that you do, but I did a couple extra events so that they had the opportunity to come talk to me, ask me questions about who I was as a person and what leadership style I had and how I was going to direct the school. When it came to students, I made sure that, for us, we have a link group, one of our leadership groups. I intentionally sat down and talked to them and got their thoughts and ideas on what they felt about the school and the direction they wanted to go. Then I started trying to do my best to show up to different events and make sure that my presence was seen. The first thing I wanted to do was observe. I said that earlier because it's kind of hard to tell somebody what to do and you don't know what's going on. And so I went in, I did a lot of observing. I didn't really rate or judge anyone. I just saw the way things worked, and over time, met students and got to know them, and then each year I will get better at that because this year I got to be a part of the recruiting process. Didn't get to do that last year, coming in in the middle of the year, so that's how I did it.
So we know, as a principal, we know how important it is to create strong bonds with your students. Would you say that you faced any challenges while creating those types of bonds with the students?
Yeah, one in particular. I mean, there have been a couple smaller things, but one in particular. I'm a little old-fashioned with dress code. I don't know if y'all have heard about that. I tell my students all the time, you dress for the occasion. And there are a lot of students in this building that think we come to school to kind of just, be at school and it's to be okay. I don't know who's going to walk through the door. We have a lot of different mentors or different organizations that want to come in and either sponsor us or be a part of what we're doing. And if you're here and you're not dressed appropriately, I can't present you. For example, if my class president comes in, the senior president comes in and they're not dressed appropriately, but that's who this company, one of the law firms, wants to meet. I'm not doing that because you're not representing the law magnet well. And so the students kind of know me now, and so they know it, but they make jokes about it, but they understand why. And I think the way I presented it to them made sense to them because it's not that I don't want you to be relaxed and be a teenager. It's just that we're here at Townview and we want better things, and so you just can't dress anyway every day. And so that's been a hiccup.
What vision do you have for the future of the law magnet, and how do you plan to implement positive changes moving forward?
One of the biggest things I said when I was being interviewed is that I really there's not a lot of need for change. The law magnet is in a great place. Anytime you go into a new job, a new position, you want to leave it better than you found it. You don't want to make sure it doesn't want to go fall backward, but you definitely want to leave it better than you found it. That means that you put your stamp, so to speak, on it. You left your presence and who you are about it. So what I want to see with the law magnet is for them to continue to be a great school. I want them to continue being the number one school that produces college graduates. We have the top-rated rank for that right now, and I want that to continue. I want us to continue to be known for mock trial. That's one of our great things. Read, write, think, and speak is part of our school's vision and mission, and that's just a short form of it, but that's what I want to see happen, that every year we continue to produce great students. They go off into the world and are able to be successful in whatever career that they choose. We are about law, but that's not our only focus. And so my legacy will be that, one, Mr. Jones, and during his tenure at the Judge Barefoot Sanders Law Magnet, was able to continue the success and the pride that has already been instilled and make sure that students are staying successful.
What's your favorite part or favorite thing about working with the Law Magnet?
Their voice. Law Magnet students are very vocal. And that's part of what we want them to do. They have to be. And so they're going to be leaders in that sense. But all people need to find their voice, whether they're my law students or each one of you. You have to find your voice. And so I want them to be outspoken, but I want them to do it in the right way. If you have a concern, learn to speak your concern and make change. Be change agents in the world when you leave here. And I do believe that no matter what field they go into, they will be.
Reflecting on your wealth of experience, please share the initial administrative step you prioritized while you were joining the Law Magnet at Townview.
Well, the initial was first during my residency. I just asked about the principal residency.
Mm-hmm.
Although you're in that program, you still have to showcase your abilities to lead. And so what I did in preparation for that was to make sure that while at North Dallas, I was doing those things that would catch the eye of executive directors who are the individuals that you interview with. And so I took on the role of acting as if North Dallas was my school. And so those are the things that I made sure that I was communicating, getting to know the staff, getting to know the students, being at events, making sure that I learned more about how that budget works, making sure I know how to allow my staff to go do professional development. No matter what it was, I was acting as if I was that leader. And so that was the biggest preparation step that I took, that when I got that opportunity, I showcased every skill set that I had.
What could you say motivated this particular action as your priority?
Well, as you go through life, there are different phases. And for me, I think that before you can become or reach that next step, you have to master the step below. And so as a teacher, I felt I had reached that point, and I stopped thinking more about lesson plans and what's going to work in my classroom to how can I make the school better. That was my drive to become an administrator. So as an AP, once I felt that I had started to master the skills of how to communicate with parents, how to communicate with students, how to communicate with staff, that's when I started thinking about I'm ready to be a principal. And so that's kind of how that transition worked.
Were there any challenges you faced when it came to communicating with your students and staff and other people?
Yes. Well, with students in particular, it's not always easy. I've been in education now 26 years. And every so often, the generations change. And well, y'all know that we go from the millennial group to Gen Z to where are we at now?
Gen Alpha, I think.
Gen Alpha. For whatever reason, the experiences that each group has forces the adults to adjust because we're not listening to the same music, we're not hearing the same messages. So we have to continually relearn how to communicate with our students. And that is the challenge because the way I talk to one generation is not the way I'm going to talk to the next because it just doesn't translate. I have my own children, and they range in those same gaps. My youngest is 16, my oldest is 30. And so I kind of get that practice at home, but when you come to school, you have to make that transition too.
So we know as a principal, especially here at Townview with multiple schools all in one building, we know the workload can be a little challenging sometimes. And, of course, us as students having to deal with many different classes, the workload can be challenging for us too. How would you say you handle the constantly changing work that you have to deal with?
Well, that has come with experience. The job of an administrator, no matter which level you're at, is about adjusting to change. I've been in schools where the student discipline rate is much higher, which caused me to transition at a matter of minutes or seconds sometimes. Other schools I've been in where those levels are not there, I have to adjust academically. Like here at Townview, the needs are much higher because our students' needs are different, right? Most of y'all are taking by junior, you're taking 4 or 5 AP courses. So we have to be able to help you manage the stress that comes with that. For me, managing 4 or 5 different tasks at one time is just simple in the sense that I've had the experience to do it. Students have not. So I take my experience in being able to delegate or organize, use a calendar and my timelines. That's how I manage what my day is. But for my students, I have to be able to teach them, hey, you got to manage your time during the day. What are you going to do with this block of time and that block of time? And then when they can't handle it, who else going to support them? Where are my counselors? Where's my parent contact? Because everybody needs to be helping support this.
Are there any unique challenges here at Townview with 6 principals?
Oh, there's always challenges when you have individuals that are able to lead their own areas in their own way. So every week we meet. There are times when things work out perfectly because we're all on the same thought process, same page. There are other times when we're not. And so we have to come to a consensus. It's like the government, I won't say the government, but that's not a good example right now for me. But at the same time, you have to find a common ground and go with what the majority says, whether you agree with it or not sometimes. And you have to be a united front once you make that decision.
What's one thing you like about working with the other principals?
You always have someone to bounce ideas off of. If it may be something I haven't experienced, especially being here at Townview and new, there are other principals in the building that have been here for years, and maybe they have had that experience. And so I can talk to them, ask them a question. Oh, yeah, we dealt with this situation 2 years ago. This is how we dealt with it. I can take that advice. It's not the exact same situation, but I can apply what they did and hopefully get to a good solution.
Was it difficult for you to transfer to Townview, having six schools, six principals? Were there any challenges you faced when you first started here?
Well, for me, it was getting to know everybody. You know, when do I step up and say, hey, this is what I want to do? Because I have my own school, and as a principal, you're trained to operate and run your school. So while I'm trying to run my school, but how do I do that and work with 5 other individuals at the same time? That was the challenge. And so you just have to figure out when to speak up for what your school needs and when you know you have to collaborate.
Was it always your plan to be a leader in education?
It wasn't my plan at all to be in education at all, to be honest. When I started out, when I first came out of college, my first decision was that I was giving up on my dream to go pro and play NFL football. I just left that alone. Didn't try out. Had a family, so I decided it was time to go to work. My 2 majors in college were intentional. I really wanted to go work for the CDC in Atlanta. But someone, one of those mentors I was talking about, said, hey, why don't you just come do this for a while until you figure it out. Well, got into education, really liked what I was doing. I was still around sports, still around a community that I knew and was comfortable with. And so, lo and behold, 26 years later, I'm still here. And I really enjoy what I do now. And I love what I do. I get up, I don't get mad. You know, people, I hate going to work. I don't have that feeling ever. I don't miss work unless I have to miss work. So for me, this is what I was meant to do. Sometimes you don't necessarily see it when it's happening. Sometimes people help push you into it, and then all of a sudden, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I think that's what happened to me.
Did you have any other career in mind other than education?
Yeah, I mean, I had 2. I was an athlete all my life, played multiple sports all the way through high school, got to college and focused on football. I had opportunities. Like I said, I just didn't take them. So once that dream was deferred a little bit, I decided there was a movie back when I was in high school called Outbreak. And so once I decided I didn't want to stay in engineering, Outbreak was a movie that was science-based, epidemiology and health. And so they tracked disease kind of like the COVID thing. And it kind of started way back then. And so that was an interest of mine. And so my goal was to go into that field. And when I took that diversion and went into education, I just kind of left that in the past too.
So speaking of the pandemic, have you faced any challenges during that era in your educational career? And if you have found any challenges, how would you say those challenges impacted you today?
There were a lot of impacts that came from COVID. The biggest was the fact that we were now dealing with a generation of students that had a 2-year gap, a 2-year shortfall in education. People thought that by having y'all online and at least pretending to listen to what the teachers were saying and doing work on the computer was going to work. Now, there are individuals who work well independently. They have the capacity to do that. But the majority of us learn better when the information is presented. I can have an exchange between myself and the teacher. If I don't know anything about what they're teaching, I can go get extra help. I can get tutoring. But when I'm at home, it's not the same. So the impact in all was negative in one way because I think it hurt the students, but it was positive in the fact that it taught us something. That yes, online can be or technology can be beneficial, but the reality is that you can't replace teachers. Teachers are the key. You know, it's not the principals. You know, we lead, but we're not the key. The key is how great our teachers are and what they do in the classroom with our students. Y'all are the most 2 important entities that are a part of education. My job is to make sure that's supported, and I learned that a lot through COVID. So we have to think differently, do things differently, and that's what I learned most from that experience.
What's one thing you like about being a principal?
I get to make decisions. I don't have to really answer to anybody. As long as I'm within protocol, which is more or less for us policy that the district sets, and the directives that are set by the Dr. Elizalde and upper leadership, because we all have different goals that are set for us depending on where we work and who we serve. So, I mean, based on that, things are good. But I really like being able to be that person that makes the deciding factor to guide where we're going. I don't make all decisions by myself, but when it comes down to it and I'm leading, I get to set the tone and direction, and that's the part I like.
Moving on to some fun questions. If you could sit down with anyone in the world for an hour-long conversation, who would it be? What would you talk about and why?
An hour-long conversation. Right now? Living? Right? Okay, you see it in this world today. So people that are not here with us. This is going to be strange, but I'm going to say Donald Trump. And I've thought about this. Why would I talk to Donald Trump? But this is the reason. He is the one person right now that gets the most attention in the United States. I would ask him why he wants to be such an antagonist, having the control he has. He has a lot of power, which in essence any president will have, but he has so much power now, and he's not president right now. But instead of being a person that's bridging the gap, he wants to be an antagonist. And to me, that's just, I don't understand. I would drill him on why. And I think I have an understanding of why, in my own opinion, but I would want to get a true answer. And the person that he is, I think he would tell me honestly why he's doing what he's doing.
Okay. If you were to organize a school talent show right now and you had to show off one of your own talents, what would it be and why?
Wow. Talents, I mean, most of my talents dealt with me being able to participate in some type of activity. Right now, I'm limited in those things. So, talent show, haven't played music in a while. Maybe shooting free throws. I just shoot free throws blindly. I could do that. I'm good enough to where I could put a blindfold on and still make free throws.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
So imagine you had a time machine and you decide to return and give your teenage self a message or like a piece of advice. What would that be?
Chase your first dream. Don't change anything. Dreams do get deferred sometimes, but chase that dream until you can't chase it anymore. Time will tell you when it's time to stop. And the decisions that you make leading up to that, don't do anything to derail it. Because in most cases, people who can stop chasing or have to stop chasing their dreams, they make one decision sometimes that alters it. And so chase it as long as you can until you can't.
Do you have any advice out there for students who want to who want to go in the educational field or want to work up to be a principal?
For me, I think we need more educators. The reality is that educators don't get the respect that they deserve. We all talk about the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the scientists, but none of those individuals are there without a great educator. And that's starting out in pre-K or kindergarten, or first grade when you first introduce into school. Someone has to teach you certain things. So education is the most important entity that is out there. It's the most important profession that we have. Because if we don't have, we just learned from COVID. If students are not getting that education, what happens? We fall back. So my advice is, if you want to be in education, it's a great career. Make sure it's what you want to do. Like I said, first, chase your dream. This is not something that's secondary. This needs to be something that you have a passion for. You want to give back, or you have the ability to give back. And if you have that, then no matter where you are, whether you're a teacher or an administrator or a principal, whether that's AP, principal, executive director, or superintendent, know that you're here to serve other people and make sure that you're putting your energies into making sure others can be lifted, because you're not going to always get the praise.
Okay, well, this wraps up our interview. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones. Your insights have truly enriched our conversation, and we're sure our CTE family is buzzing with newfound knowledge about your incredible experiences. Please be sure to follow us on all of our social medias down below. And until next time, this is KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview. I'm Art Lover.
I'm Unison.
I'm Jasmine.
I'm Dante.
And we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to KSBM Radio, the voice of Townview.
My radio station.
We hope you enjoyed the great content and great discussion, all from a student's perspective. Make sure to follow us on Twitter for the latest updates at KSBM_TVT or on Facebook at KSBM Radio.
Add 'em on Facebook.
Check them on Facebook.
Take care.